and entertain.
Hi, everybody. I'm Crystal Haynes. Tonight on Greater Boston, Claudine Gay is officially out as president of Harvard University. So how did we get here? How is Harvard responding? And is there a bigger issue at play? Then the new president of the Boston City Council, Ruthzee Louijeune, on her unanimous victory and her vision for Boston. What's really behind the resignation of Harvard's first black president? Claudine Gay has officially stepped down from the university's top job after a campaign of pressure over the school's response to the Israel-Hamas war, issues of anti-Semitism on campus, and allegations of plagiarism. Now, the controversy started last month after Gay and two other university presidents were grilled by members of Congress about their administration's response to the rise of anti-Semitism on campus. Their testimony drew outrage from the right, and shortly after, UPenn President Liz McGill was forced to resign. Claudine Gay also took heat after that hearing, exacerbated a few weeks later. Then a conservative newspaper published a report accusing her of plagiarizing passages in multiple academic papers. But since her resignation, outrage has poured in on Gay's behalf. Now, joining me now to break all of this down, we've been watching the story closely, our GBH News senior investigative reporter Phillip Martin and Lynn Pasquerella, president of the American Association of Colleges and Universities and former president of Mount Holyoke College. Thank you so much both for you being here today. What a conversation this has been over the last few weeks, really. Indeed. And, you know, Phillip, you and I were talking about this is more than just the protests that we saw on campus at Harvard and then this congressional hearing. It was a lot more than that.
Well, that's right. I think that what is happening with Claudine Gay is the canary in the coal mine, if you will, because some individuals have been very clear. I was in touch today with Ilya Shapiro, who is the head of constitutional programs for the Manhattan Institute, which is a libertarian right-wing think tank, which has been around for a long time. And their project, particularly since 2020, has focused on dismantling any vestige of what they call policies aimed at tackling what they derisively dismiss as systemic racism, structural racism. They don't believe there's any such thing. Their project or campaign is focused on creating merit within the academy, And they think DEI is the antithesis, let's do that again, of meritocracy. And so what they see in Claudine Gay, as this individual described her today at the Manhattan Institute, he described her as a model for mediocrity. So what we're dealing with is not just a question of her missteps in the context of speaking out against anti-Semitism. What we're also seeing is a campaign on the part of various institutions and individuals, including members of Congress, including the Manhattan Institute and other conservative institutes such as Heritage, to essentially dismantle this policy and programs of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. That's what this is all about. So I think we need to change the headlines. The headline is not about plagiarism. The headline is not about anti-Semitism. This is a bigger project, and groups like the Manhattan Institute are very clear. Christopher Rufo has been leading the campaign against this. Christopher Rufo has become a star within right-wing circles because he essentially took the term critical race theory and turned it into a curse word, a curse phrase, rather. Critical race theory is something very serious in the context of law and legal studies. But he said it's something that's being taught within K to 12, which of course makes no sense. It's not true. Right. He said it's part and it's being infused in every aspect of our life. What he really meant to say was anything that they associate with the term woke is antithetical and problematic to this notion of merit, as they see merit within the campus. And merit, they feel, is something that Claudine Gay did not represent. Thus, they're targeting Claudine Gay. And she's not, and he was clear that she will not be the last in this campaign to rid the campuses of the results, as they see it, of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And she, again, is seen as the poster child for that.
Yeah. And Liz, Lynn, rather, apologies. One of the things that really has been a conversation on college campuses, how do you handle this in a world where college campuses are trying to figure out how to respond and react to how students are feeling? What's the right way to respond and react as the head of these institutions? You're former president of Mount Holyoke College. I mean, this has got to be something that you think about as you're watching this play out in the news.
Absolutely, especially as president of an association whose mission it is to advance the democratic purposes of higher education by promoting diversity, innovation, and equity in liberal education. And so rather than recognizing the inextricable link between equity, diversity, and excellence as foundational to our nation's historic mission of educating for democracy, this campaign by Rufo and his colleagues upends that and reinscribes the notion that equity, diversity, and excellence are inconsistent. And as we've just heard, the consequences are profound and far-reaching. Look at what happened with the Supreme Court decision that has abolished race-based admission. Look at this rhetoric and attempts by campus leaders to ensure that our campuses are places of welcome and belonging for all students. It leads to what Claude Steele talked to as stereotype threat, the notion that students of color, women, don't deserve a place in the academy because, after all, you're only there because we've abandoned merit in favor of social justice warriors, according to Rufo and others. And the headlines this morning were egregious. Not only Stefanik and Fox taking credit, but when he uses the language with respect to President Gay of saying scalped and then says, we're coming after all of you, it creates an environment of intimidation and violence that has a chilling effect, and that's exactly what it's designed to do. So Scott Yenner, who wrote the playbook for Governor DeSantis in attacking DEI, as in Florida as a place where woke goes to die, said, our goal is not to reform higher education, it is to dismantle it and make sure that the brand of higher education is like the brand of Philip Morris. So anytime you think about higher education, you think about death and harm and destruction.
Yeah, and part of Claudine Gay's resignation letter, we have it here, says that it has been distressing to have doubt cast upon my commitments to confronting hate and to upholding scholarly rigor, two bedrock values that are fundamental to who I am, and frightening to be subjected to personal attacks and threats fueled by racial animus. To me, it seems like with Claudine Gay's trajectory, with this whole thing, almost it feels like a cautionary tale that shouldn't be there. Like if you don't step perfectly, then you will fall. And it didn't seem like, even though Harvard voted to keep her in, the support wasn't there internally. And I'm thoughtful about what that means for other folks who will come after her.
Well, that's right. And Lynn said something I just think is spot on when she talks about equity and excellence.
Yes.
A lot of people think that those things are asymmetrical. And the fact is, you can many of the students I've interviewed over the years have been absolutely exemplars of excellence. And I'm talking about Black and Latino, Asian students, students of color who some folks might feel should not be within the academy. The same thing has been said for some scholars like Khalil Gibran Muhammad, who I interviewed today also, who said something that was very interesting. I did not realize this, that at the Congressional hearing, his class was actually pointed out, spotlighted as one of these classes of mediocrity. And it was also spotlighted as a class where anti-Semitism is promulgated. And I think we have to take a step back and realize that even the term anti-Semitism, anti-Semitism is a real thing. We've seen it over the years. basically turn into a crescendo of hate on the part of groups like the National NSA 131 and so NSA 131 and so on and so forth, hate groups. And we've seen some individuals who have responded to this situation in Gaza with anti-Semitism.
Right.
But to accuse the president of Harvard of anti-Semitism and to weaponize that is problematic. And I'm pointing to people like Bill Ackman, the billionaire who has used his power to basically bring down Claudine Gay. He militates against, correctly against anti-Semitism, but embraces Elon Musk, who promulgates anti-Semitism. So we have to question if this is the real goal of even individuals like Bill Ackman, because he has, again, joined with Barry Weiss, has joined with Elon Musk to target diversity, equity, and inclusion. That seems to be, now he's saying that that's tantamount to anti-Semitism. It's an interesting confluence of events and circumstances that are going on. It's bringing together interesting bedfellows, people who embrace anti-Semitism, like Marjorie Taylor Greene,
right,
now posing as a friend of Jewish people, and Elise Stefanik, who just months ago in the last election endorsed an anti-Semite in New York, is now seen as someone who is militating against anti-Semitism.
Well, Phil, we actually have a portion of Bill Ackman's 400-word tweet on Gay's resignation. It reads, under DEI's ideology, any policy, program, educational system, economic system, grading system, admission policy that leads to unequal outcomes among people of different skin colors is deemed racist. Harvard must create an academic environment with real academic freedom and free speech where self-censoring speech codes and cancel culture are forever banished from campus. And Lynn, I'd love for you to react to that, because I know that seems like that's the antithesis of what the organization is trying to do, this network of colleges and universities that you represent.
Right. Well, it's ironic because these same critics who were decrying the chilling of speech and cancel culture have employed that tactic as a way of canceling President Gay and as a way of chilling speech using threats and intimidation.
What happens now on colleges and universities? Like, is there a conversation being had right now about how to respond and react to this situation, how to respond and react to students who are activated by the conflict between Israel and Hamas?
There are many conversations going on, and many critics, I'm thinking of Zeke Emanuel, first and foremost, who talked about the failure of liberal education and the ways in which we fail to teach students to have a moral compass, to speak across differences, to imagine the possibility that some of their most fundamentally held beliefs might actually be mistaken. And yet, in these attempts to dismantle diversity, equity, and inclusion, to implement educational gag orders that proscribe a discussion of divisive concepts, LGBTQ plus issues, even reproductive rights, we deprive students of the very education that they will need to position them for success in work, citizenship, and life. We must be able to engage in the unfettered pursuit of the truth, the free exchange of ideas, without fearing that we will be harmed as a result of conversation. So there's a renewed emphasis on respectful dialogue, listening critically and with understanding, and ensuring that the rights of all are protected. And what this conversation on the Hill did was to frame the issues in a way that mandates that we reconsider speech codes on college campuses. But we also have to look at this in the broader context of an attack on higher education. Over the past several years, where confidence in higher education has reached its lowest point ever, with only 36% of the American public believing that higher education is headed in the right direction, or that a college degree is worth the investment, and critics claiming that higher education is too expensive, too difficult to access, doesn't teach people 21st century skills. And what we're hearing, of course, from the Hill is that we are bastions of liberal progressivism that are brainwashing the next generation of snowflakes to melt at the slightest abrasion of their sensibilities. And yet Who are the snowflakes now?
Right. Well, Lynn Pasquerella and Phillip Martin, thank you so much. This is a conversation we're going to continue for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, it's a new year and a new Boston City Council. Earlier this week, 4 new councilors were sworn in along with the new council president, at-large councilor Ruthzee Louijeune, who joins me right now in studio. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Crystal, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. You know, it was such a historic day when the vote or the election came in. You know, it was Haitian Independence Day, and you're Haitian American. What did that feel like?
It's interesting. It was a big day for a number of reasons. It was the new year, and people are usually out, you know, enjoying themselves or recovering from enjoying themselves. My family were usually all together in Randolph for a family sleepover. Extended family, aunts, cousins, family, friends to bring in Haitian Independence Day when we're together, eating soup, watching movies, and starting the new year with a prayer. So we didn't have that, and they all came to the inauguration, and so it was incredibly special. It was a day I won't forget.
And you're the first Haitian American to have this position on the city council.
Yeah.
What do you think that means or says to your constituents, but to the city?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm the first Haitian American city councilor, first, you know, Haitian American city council president, and I think it means a lot. You know, I am an at-large councilor, which means I represent every resident in the city of Boston, from Mattapan to Charlestown and everyone in between. And there's special meaning for the Haitian community that has felt for a long time a lack of representation at the city level, and now we have people who can call City Hall and can speak in their native tongue and get their issues met. Boston is home to the 3rd largest Haitian diaspora, so it's a really big deal. And it's a big deal for so many, and so I'm just honored. You know, I'm just like a regular person, but that I can be a point of pride and a point of affirmation for people it's special.
And I know you make it a point to be in the community. I mean, I follow you on social media, and I'm at the events that you're at a lot of events.
Yes. Being at large, to show up in community, I think about what I needed to see in an elected official as a young Black girl growing up in Mattapan, where oftentimes we didn't necessarily see politicians knocking on our door or at our community events. And I think that's the work of equity, is reversing past harm with intentionality. And so both it is in my spirit and in my being to be in community. It brings me joy. I get my joy from being rooted deeply in community, but it is a responsibility to have people touch and feel and see government, that we show up to, and we want to be in community with you. We want to hear from you about how we make our city better for you, whether that means our budget process, making sure that our budget is reflecting what you value, or that means making sure that our schools are being held accountable to make sure that all of our young kids, regardless of zip code, regardless of parental income, are really not able to just do well, but really able to thrive and know that anything is possible.
Yeah, and you're stepping in, or you're coming in after what has been described as a tumultuous year on the council with lots of
2 years.
2 years. There you go. Yeah, exactly. And you know, do you feel like you need to come in and right the ship, or what do you hope in terms of having more conversations across thoughts, across, you know, we didn't necessarily see in the last 2 years?
That's a great question. I mean, not all was lost, right? Especially the stories that are picked up on are the ones that can get the most clicks and attention. But it was a pretty fraught 2 years. We did redistricting, which is always a politically tense process. We're still coming out of COVID, which really presented some of that collegiality that usually prevented, you know, helped to block that from really forming. We had some staff changeovers at the council level, and then, you know, other people running for different offices. All of that creates some tension. I'm hoping that we can return back to basics. Politics, you know, it can be a really hard place. It's a hard arena. I have an aunt who's a nun, and someone said to me, if you wanted, you know, it all to be one big family, you should have joined the convent. I checked with my aunt, and she was like, there's politics here too. So, I mean, we're going to have political differences. We're a big city. We all, you know, might disagree on the pace of equality, the pace of progress. That's going to happen. But we can do that while still saying hi to each other as we walk down the hallway, while still not you know, trying to take each other down. I don't believe that, you know, I don't believe this in any way. If your equation for success is dependent on taking someone else down, you should find a new job. You should find a new industry. Like, it should not be dependent on taking someone else down. You should shine in your own right and in your own glory. And that's what I try to do alongside my constituents as we build community and solve problems. And that's what I hope to do as City Council President. Each of my new 4 colleagues, John Fitzgerald, Enrique Pepin, Henry Santana, Ben Weber, they all bring their unique talents, their unique humor, their background either as a family in public service or a newly arrived, a recent immigrant who grew up in public housing. They each have their skills and talents and backgrounds, and I hope to help bring that out.
Absolutely. I know you have an ambitious agenda in terms of what you want to get done as City Council President,
Yes.
housing
Yes.
being one of them. We actually have some numbers here where the average monthly rent increase in Boston between July 2022 and July 2023 was really high. A 1-bedroom jumped from about $2,250 to $2,595, a 2-bedroom $2,775 to $3,150. It's becoming, we've been saying it's a crisis, but it seems like it's reached a fever pitch.
It has. I think that's exactly and unfortunately right. We are the second most expensive city to rent. There's such a high barrier, and 65% of our residents in Boston are renters. And so I care deeply about homeownership, making that a reality, even how we can move some renters over to homeownership, but we also have to acknowledge that we have to take care of our renters, which is why we are working on everything we can to make the cost of housing more affordable, whether that's using city-owned land, making sure that we have a city with a strong bond rating that we can be using to build more housing. The government can be in that game. The federal government has abdicated its responsibility, but I'm excited by new leadership at the Boston Housing Authority about what we can accomplish by putting our heads together. There's not going to be one thing that solves it. We have the real estate transfer fee bill on Beacon Hill that would create an additional pool of money for the construction of affordable housing, money that we are currently leaving on the table. We have the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, which would prevent displacement because it would allow tenants in buildings to purchase the building, which may sound impossible because if you're renting, how do you have the money to buy a whole building?
Yeah.
But that's where the work with nonprofit organizations come in, with community land trust, with nonprofit developers who care about stability in communities and preventing displacement.
And they do that in other cities, major cities as well, with the tenants purchasing the building.
Exactly. So, and we have to learn from other cities. We have a rent stabilization bill that's before the State House that we worked diligently on that wouldn't prevent rent increases, but would, make it so that our wages, people's living wages aren't increasing by 50% a year. It's nowhere near that. But some people are seeing rent increases in that amount. And so we have to do something to try to attack that. There's so much, looking at city-owned land to see how we build more affordable units and properties. There's so many different things that we have to do to accomplish that goal. One of them we did last year, which was increasing, if there's a developer who's building a property in Boston of 10 or more units, 7 or more units now, increasing the percentage of those units that have to be affordable, and also deepening that affordability, lowering the threshold at which people are eligible for those units, because we know that oftentimes what is affordable for one isn't affordable for someone else.
That's right.
So trying to make it more broader so that more people, especially people of color, working class families, are able to apply and successfully receive one of these affordable units.
Yeah, for sure. I think one other thing I'd love to ask you about in the time we have left with you. Mayor Wu recently apologized formally to Willie Bennett and Alan Swanson, their family, publicly linked to the Charles Stewart murder. Right before the holiday break, we actually had the HBO documentarians on the show talking about that, and the Bennett family wouldn't even participate in the documentary because they were so aggrieved by how they were treated over the years. What do you think about that move by Mayor Wu to do that formally before the public? Because so many mayors would have said, this is a legal matter that had nothing to do with my administration, so I'm going to stay away from it.
We are a city and a country in need of deep healing. You don't get to the healing unless you address the issues straight on. And by sweeping them under the rug or saying that it wasn't my administration or I wasn't alive or I wasn't living here, doesn't help us get to that healing. And so I think I commend the mayor for that move, because we have to, even the hardest issues, the ones that are painful where, there's blame to go around, we address those issues. The only way we get through is by going directly to the issue. And so I think that was a very good decision. It shows her focus and her intentionality and the bold vision that she's trying to lead with, and that we're going to be, you know, working in partnership with on the council, of course, while holding her accountable and making sure that the administration is meeting the moment and the needs of our students and our residents and Black and brown communities and everyone from Charlestown to East Boston. But I think it was a courageous step, and I commend her for it.
So lots happened over the break. I also want to ask you something that has nothing to do with the city council, but everything to do with concerns about DE&I in the state as a whole, and especially at Harvard. We know that Claudine Gay, also Haitian American woman, the first Haitian American Black woman in that position. I mean, as someone who's also a first, what do you think about this situation? How does it make you feel to see her resign and leave that position?
It was it's such a point of pride for the Haitian community. For her to be in that role. And I remember being at her inauguration, and I remember just being so proud as a Bostonian, as a Haitian, as a graduate of Harvard Law School and the Kennedy School. It was just amazing. And so I just honestly, I feel saddened and I feel heartbroken. The Attorney General yesterday commended me on becoming president of the Boston City Council. She was the first Black woman to head the council. And often first, you know, experience a number of challenges and setbacks, and a lot of people trying to prevent that first from even happening. And so I commend Dr. Gay for being in the ring. And we know that for women and for women of color, being in the ring is an even harder and daunting task. But there is legacy even in an attempt. And so many people, especially in Black and brown communities, because of histories and legacies of racism and exclusion, our legacies can often be found in the attempt, and there's value in that. And so I want to honor that for her.
Ruthzee Louijeune, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for tonight, but come back tomorrow. More on Claudine Gay's resignation as Harvard president and its impact on the universities across the country. Plus, a look at this weekend's predicted snowfall. Say it ain't so. That and more tomorrow at 7. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Crystal Haynes. Good night.
Laura Simmons